tech warning. Don't worry if you can't see yourself. This is a Zoom webinar, so all the attendees will be automatically muted with their videos off. So you're only going to be able to see and hear the panelists. If you have any questions throughout the panel, just put it in the Q&A chat function, and then we will get to answering all the questions for at the end in the last 15 or so minutes. If you are interested in donating to the Friends of Land, Air, Water, which is a group that gives summer stipends to law students who are working at nonprofits, the link will be in the Q&A function, and you can do that. So this panel is about Albedo Climate Solutions, and it is a newly created 501c3 nonprofit that has been established by several well-educated young people. So Albedo Climate Solutions is a rising 501c3 nonprofit based in New York. And it says climate change is an overwhelming problem. Information about the issue is inconsistent, incomprehensible, and leaves communities largely unprepared for its efforts. Climate change affects all people. Therefore, everyone must be empowered to be a part of the solution. The team at Albedo is here to educate the public and provide accessible solutions for creating a carbon neutral, climate resilient future. So our first speaker will be Gianna Lum. She is the executive director of Albedo. Gianna founded Albedo and is committed to making climate change education more accessible while sparking both local and global action. She has a background in paleoclimate, environmental policy, and environmental communications. Previously, she served as an executive director and lead facilitator at Climatepedia and worked on climate models for the NASA Goddard Institution for Space Studies. She earned 2 bachelors in Earth System Science and Urban Studies at UC Irvine, as well as a master's in climate and society from Columbia University. We will also have Amelia Williamson, the executive assistant at Albedo, my goodness. Amelia co-founded Albedo and is dedicated to growing the organization into an educational platform that provides original, unbiased content about climate change news. She holds a bachelor's in journalism from UC Irvine and is with a focus in political science. She helped organize a local march for climate and wrote about campus events for the UC Irvine newspaper. Amelia envisions Albedo being a platform that provides multiple forms of interactive media to cater to every type of learner. And then we will also have John K. Quinn on our panel, and he is the Vice President and Education Team Lead at Albedo. He has an academic background focused on policy, sustainability, and marine science. The importance of education and communication is a principal tenet of John's values. John previously served as a remote intern for the Institute for Tribal Environmental Professionals and was a lead facilitator at Climatepedia. Throughout his academic career, has dedicated his efforts to bridging knowledge gaps between scientific research and highly vulnerable communities. John's education from Columbia University has highlighted the need for accessible and reliable information, as well as taught him necessary skills to foster a space for creating solutions, resolving conflicts, and cultivating ideas. John is also currently working on his second master's degree in science education. So now we will start with Gianna.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gianna here, Executive Director of Albedo Climate Solutions. And we're here today to talk a little bit about founding a nonprofit during a pandemic and some of the paperwork required for that, since I know some of you are interested in either starting one or all the legal stuff required. And we have Amelia here too.
Hello, my name is Amelia. I am the executive assistant of Albedo and a co-founder. My degree is in journalism, and I'm very excited to have you guys in our panel today.
So a little bit about our origin story. All of us graduated either right before the pandemic or in the midst of it. We are recent graduates of the master's program in climate and society at Columbia University and the University of California, Irvine.
Our focus is on interdisciplinary climate education, and we all have a desire to create meaningful climate action, both on an individual, personal level, as well as for education in universities.
And at the time, we saw that there was so much work to be done to create meaningful climate action and create accessible resources for people to learn about climate change and know what to do about it. But we saw that no one was doing it as an accessible way that we wanted to, and no one wasn't hiring in our field to do what we wanted to do. So we all came together and formed Albedo, and now we're in the process of actually making it an official 501c3 nonprofit organization.
So we started by brainstorming with a team. A lot of people were involved in the master's program. And like Gianna said, we're looking for jobs, but there's nothing available. So we made our own thing. We created a shared Google folder and had brainstorm documents for all of the team members to contribute their ideas. And then we allowed team members to add their thoughts, and we voted and commented on other people's ideas until we had refined them into something tangible with a core planning team, about 4 to 5 people. We narrowed down all of the ideas to get a values, problem statement, vision statement, mission statement, as well as a name and logo.
So we're going to go through what all those different statements are and how they fit into the paperwork later on. First, we had to figure out what our whole team's values were. So we looked at what our brainstorm sheet was saying and then fleshed them out a little bit more. All of your nonprofit's activities and partnerships that you create have to follow your values. So it's really important that everybody in your team, when you're founding your organization, is on board with a core set of beliefs and values. And whenever you create partnerships with other organizations, you have to make sure that they understand your values and that you are aligned with one another so that anything that you do does not violate your organization's values. So sorry, there's like sirens in New York City right now.
So we're going to tell you more about our values in detail. These are our main focuses. Accessibility. We want to break down barriers to climate change information by providing free and easy to understand content for everybody, all kinds of different learners, visual, auditory, as well as creating an education program to teach. Accountability. We are aware of our environmental impacts and are transparent about our actions. We hold ourselves, the media, industries, governments, and neighbors accountable for the climate narrative that is put forth. Authenticity, we stay true to our mission and values in all of our work and collaborations. Climate justice, we will focus on transformative climate justice by bringing attention to existing power relations and decision authority makers that perpetuate injustices as we seek to understand how vulnerable populations cope with climate change, and we aim to protect human rights. The last one is compassion. We respect that everybody has their own experiences and perspectives, and we recognize that everybody's individual part in climate solutions is unique and different.
And when defining your values, it's really important to look up, are there alternative definitions for them? What does your team really mean when they mean climate justice? We came up with transformative climate justice because we wanted to exist the power relations and the injustices that are perpetuated right now. But yeah, it's not just as easy as just putting together words that all resonate with you. You have to figure out what's behind the meaning of all of those and how could that be misconstrued by a potential collaborator in the future or by the public in general. Next, we put together our problem statement, and we really started off by just having a Google document and asking everybody on our team, what problem about climate change do you want to solve and what barriers exist right now? And as a nonprofit, you're trying to solve some main problems together, and you exist because all of these problems exist. So everything that you do, All the partnerships you create, all the programs that you have should be to solve this problem as a nonprofit. And then you have to support that this problem exists with research, and this is something that you'll show to the public, to any potential collaborators or funders in the future.
So we did some research, some polls, we gathered data, and this is the problem statement that we came up with for our organization. Climate change is an overwhelming problem. Information about the issue is inconsistent, incomprehensible, and leaves communities largely unprepared for its effects. Climate change affects all people, therefore everyone must be empowered to be a part of the solution. A team of experts is vital to educate the public and to provide accessible solutions for creating a low carbon, climate resilient future.
And then once you have a problem that you're all trying to solve, then you come up with a vision statement. So your vision statement should answer the questions: what does success look like? When will you know that your work has been completed and your organization is no longer needed? And what is your end goal? Kind of a weird thing that you have to do for nonprofits is to figure out, what do you need to do so that your organization becomes obsolete and you know that all of your work has been done. These are really broad visions way into the future, but are you trying to minimize all injustices? Or are you trying to make sure nobody in the world is hungry anymore? What's the big picture, and what are you all trying to strive towards as a group? And then you can break down your vision statement into like 2, 5, or 10-year vision statements and strategic plans to actually move towards your vision and figure out your progress towards your vision.
So this is our vision statement. This is our ultimate goal, is to have a culture of climate aware individuals empowered with the information and tools to advance meaningful, inclusive, and effective climate action.
This is like our end goal. And then we have our mission statement. That is how we're getting to our vision statement. So this is our why. Why do you do what you're doing with your nonprofit? And how do you want the public to be seeing you? And people aren't really drawn to what you do, but the reasoning why you're doing it and your backstory.
So Albedo's mission statement is to guide people to reflect on their role to advance meaningful, inclusive, and effective climate solutions. We used the word reflect specifically in this mission statement because of the definition of Albedo, which is the name of the organization. So we spent a lot of time and thought to the name. Albedo, it means the reflectivity of the surface and how much light is reflected back into the atmosphere from the sun. So, it's kind of a double meaning there.
And when we thought about our mission statement and how to make it really reflective of what we're doing, we chose the word inclusive rather than something like equitable. And we really wanted to break out of an echo chamber of perhaps just the left working on climate action. And we wanted to show that everybody is part of the solution. So we workshopped this mission statement a lot with our core team, with other collaborators, with people who had a college degree, people who were on the left, were on the right, to figure out what would resonate with people the most and be understandable for the general public. So a lot of thesaurus pulling out and a lot of conversations with people to get this one sentence done properly. We also spent a lot of time.
We spent a lot of time developing the name and the logo. Like I said, we had brainstormed actually many different names, but the full name is Albedo Climate Solutions. So your name should also, be relevant to what you're doing. That explains exactly what your organization does. To now avoid acronyms, as a lot of older nonprofits are acronyms. we want to have something that's recognizable and easy to remember and recognize. We also designed a versatile logo. It is the A with the arrows with the sun behind it to show the reflectivity. The design in the background colors is an earth. We also thought a lot about our fonts for our website, fonts that are accessible, easy for everybody to read, things that we can post on social media, websites, marketing, and branding materials. Our logo, any logo for any nonprofit needs to be accessible and easy to cut down and make more simple and recognizable so that you can put it on merchandise and advertise yourself too.
And this is the logo that we have right now. Logos do change though, but this is what we're going to start off on our website as. And we wanted something that was scientifically accurate, that actually represented what albedo was. So the arrows represent reflectivity, and we have the sun there. Another important thing when you are naming your organization is to think about how you're going to drive traffic to your website. And having names and words in your name that are really searchable words tend to drive more traffic. So climate and solutions were words that we thought would have people come to our website more often and find the resources that they needed for climate solutions. Once you have all that, you start putting together your team and your organizational structure. So most nonprofits have a board and officers overseeing the entire organization and making sure that everyone's doing work that's in line with the mission. So the board sets monthly and annual goals for the org while the officers execute some of the goals. We have the executive director, that's me, and Amelia, who's the executive assistant, overseeing all of the day-to-day activities and putting together the strategic plans to keep track of the activities and make sure we're meeting our goals in the long term. And the two of us also attend a bunch of the team meetings to make sure all of our team leads are getting the support that they need and that we're on track of fulfilling the mission and our long-term strategic plan. So right now we have 3 different departments within our org. We have education, that's what John's leading. We have a content creation team that's putting together resources for the education program and eventually stuff on social media. And we have a consultation team that's coming together for services for small businesses and city climate action plans. That part's still in the works, but we have team leads for every sector doing the research and figuring out what's needed for the long-term plan. And then in each department, we also have some committees. So education program has curriculum builders, mentors, people who are creating our educational resources and slideshows. And we have people who are designing our logos and designing things that we'll eventually put up on social media to share with the public. All right, we'll get into the fun stuff, the paperwork now. I know a lot of you are in the legal field or are studying to become lawyers, so you probably won't be as bored as most people for all the paperwork. So we'll go in depth of what all this paperwork means and what you need in each set of paperwork to submit to the IRS.
Okay, so just a quick overview of the paperwork that you need to put together to start a nonprofit. The employer identification number, articles of incorporation, bylaws, strategic plans, business plans, and the 1023 form. All of this except the strategic plans are submitted officially to the IRS.gov. And so we started with the employer identification number. This is totally free to get online through the IRS. All you need is to go to the IRS.gov website and there's an EIN online application. All you need to fill out this application is the organization's legal name, an address in the state that you're registering in, and the type of organization that you want to be classified as. For example, education, social services, law services, etc.
And beware of any scams online. There's a lot of people who say that you need to pay money for them to apply for an EIN for you. It should be completely free through the IRS directly through their website. If you need that link, let me know. I'll give my email afterwards. But it should be free and nobody should be charging you for that. And you don't need to necessarily have an office space to get an EIN or to establish yourselves as a nonprofit. We're actually using one of our founders' addresses to get all of our mail and to have all of our paperwork go there. And that cuts a lot of our costs with paying for more overhead or having to pay for a PO box. And it's actually recommended to have an actual address instead of a PO box because it looks more official to have a official physical address.
So next we put together articles of incorporation. These establish your organization as an official business entity in the state. And every state in the United States has a separate form for the articles of incorporation. So there's a lot of free resources online. We just followed the guidelines for New York. And then with those, we made the name and principal office of the organization, the purpose of the organization, the name and addresses of the incorporators, and the signatures of the incorporators.
And you can keep your purpose of your organization broad so that you don't have to keep putting amendments for your documents. Just make sure that what's written in your purpose can encompass all of your goals for the future. And your incorporators don't necessarily have to be the board members or officers, just the people who want to incorporate it and be the founders and sign their name on the paperwork to submit. After you have the articles of incorporation, you can go on to the bylaws. The bylaws will be a pretty thick stack of papers to show where your offices are. That could just be your mailing address where you're getting your mail. If you're just starting off, the purpose, that will be from your articles of incorporation. You'll also have what the responsibilities of all of your board of directors are, how long are their terms, are there any conflicts of interests that you have to address? What are the responsibilities of all of the officers? Are there co-officers? How do you create more? What's the procedure for creating other officer positions if the board sees that's the best fit? How are committees formed? How do you keep track of committees? And can people outside of the board be part of committees? There's a lot of language on execution of instruments, deposits, and funds, figuring out who can legally write checks on behalf of your nonprofit, who can accept gifts on behalf of the nonprofit, who's in charge of the record keeping, another language on corporate records, reports, and a seal. We have our design team designing that seal, and also when your fiscal year is, how are you filling out your taxes? And a really important part in your bylaws is to write about conflict of interest and compensation approval policies. For most states, your board members normally aren't supposed to be compensated for their work. That's a conflict of interest. Sometimes they can be paid if they're doing other positions within the organization. I think in the state of New York, it has to be less than 50% can actually be compensated members. Everyone else has to be a non-compensated person who's not doing additional work that can have compensation. But if you do have somebody, say, who is a board member and is a staff member on the education team, they wouldn't be allowed to vote for their own salary or vote on anything regarding the specific programs that they're involved in. So just have something really specific so that you don't get into this muddy conflict of interest issue later on. And then there's also amendments for the bylaws. How do you amend the articles? And also language saying the prohibition against sharing corporate profits and assets. An important thing to know is that as a nonprofit, you actually don't technically own your nonprofit. Nonprofits are owned by the public. So any revenue that the nonprofit gains, either from donations or from events or any revenue sources, normally if you do have staff, the staff are paid out based on what the board approves. And if there's any additional revenue, you can't just give that to your board members or any other people in the organization. That just stays in the org's bank account and can be allocated the next cycle once the board approves that again. And you also need to have a clause saying what happens if you disband as an organization. You can't just distribute the money. You have to say exactly where that goes. Does that get donated to another organization? Do specific people get that? And then in the bylaws, you also have to say what is expected of members of your organization who aren't board members or officers, and what does that entail for a member?
Something that we have been working on and is still a work in progress, because this doesn't need to be submitted as official legal paperwork, nor for the IRS, but it really helps the organization with its long-term vision. It's a document that shows the direction we want the nonprofit to take in a short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans. So we define those as 2-year plans, 5-year, and our 10-year plan. We're following the SMART goals, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. And we are going to apply this strategic plan to all departments and projects of the organization.
And these strategic plans are important both internally so that your team knows what they're doing, and also for any funders or collaborators so that they know what direction your org's going towards and if they want to support or work with you based on your plans. We're also putting together a business plan. For the business plan, you don't want to have to keep editing that as well, and you need to submit that in your 1023 form to the IRS. So it's okay to keep some of it broad so that you can add more things that can be included in the business plan later on, but anything that's not included in the business plan will be really difficult to be tax deductible on later on down the road if you don't include that and explain how that is part of your mission statement. And these are just the components you need in there. An executive summary of everything that's in the plan, a description of what your organization does, how that fits with your mission, what products and services you're offering as a nonprofit, how you're marketing, how you're operating internally, what's the management and organizational structure, and what's your financial plan.
So all of this comes together as paperwork, except the strategic plan, of course, you don't need to submit, but everything else goes together in one package to the IRS called the 1023 form. The documents are combined: the EIN, the articles of incorporation, the bylaws, the business plan, and the 1023 form, which is the form you need to fill out to submit all of this. And this 1023 form, right now they're saying it can take up to 6 months to be accepted and processed through the IRS because of COVID. But when it is approved, it allows the nonprofit to be tax exempt under 501c3 of the IRS. We also included a link to this form, and you can file it yourself, and it allows tax write-offs for any donations we receive, or
or any of your services too that you receive revenue from. There's 2 types of 1023 forms actually. There's the regular one, and there's also the 1023 EZ. The 1023 EZ is for any organization that doesn't expect to have more than $50,000 in revenue over the course of 3 years. That does limit you from getting certain grants and other opportunities for funding. So unless you really want to go quickly and don't expect to have that much revenue, I'd really recommend to go through all of the other paperwork and do the 1023 regular form. But the 1023 EZ doesn't require you to have a full business plan. It does not require you to have as fleshed out of bylaws as the larger 1023 form. But just so you know, there's 2 options, and there's the 2 links on the IRS website. You can choose and figure out what fits best for your org.
Lastly, we have some other tips that we have found helpful in building the organization is to have mentors outside of the organization. So people who aren't necessarily board members or anything, but for example, we have used professors from some of our programs just to guide us and give us feedback and ideas of how we can improve and change things. It's important to set boundaries when you're working with friends because oftentimes that's how you recruit people in the beginning. And so it's important to keep your friendship separate than the work stuff. Gianna and I have been friends for years, and it can definitely be difficult, but it's important to do that as well as communicate about your feelings and the organization. We check in on those things with our team often. We utilize Slack as our communication platform mainly, but we also do communicate via email. We have separate group chats, and you can speak with people individually on Slack. So it's super helpful to communicate whenever because you can set yourself active or snooze yourself. And so it's really great to be able to communicate when you need to. And we're always reevaluating our goals and timelines all of the time. We're developing those things and putting that in our strategic plan.
So with that, we're open for questions. We also have John Quinn, who's been helping with that process. He's our acting president right now, and he's been helping with planning a lot of the paperwork. And he's also part of the education team and helping put together the curriculum. So I think, Lisa, you said that the Q&A will pop up somewhere on the screen.
Yeah, so far we have not received any questions. So if anyone has
Okay.
any questions, please shoot them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have to wrap early, I suppose.
And you can also contact any of us over email, Gianna, Amelia, or John at albedoclimatesolutions.org.
Yeah, definitely ask us any questions, but thank you everybody for your participation. Our website's expected to be up soon. We had a little bump in the road, so we're getting it up definitely in the next couple of weeks. So send us an email if you're interested in working with us, supporting us, donating to us, anything.
We're happy to answer any questions either about starting a nonprofit or about Albedo Climate Solutions itself.
Gianna, we do have a question from Francesca. She wants to know what are some of our longer term goals with the organization?
Yeah, so we have an education program that we have in the works right now. We're putting together a 12-week climate science and justice program for anyone who's a incoming high school student or above to learn about climate change and what they can either do through their careers or in their communities to engage in climate action. We have a long-term goal for this to really grow as a program and for people all over the world to be able to access this program for free. We also have a content creation team who's putting together more accessible resources so that people don't have to read academic journals or search too much to learn about climate science and solutions and all the social issues related to climate change. We're putting together infographics, and we've been talking to animators, so eventually hopefully a YouTube channel to teach about this. And then a longer term goal, we're working on climate consultation for both small businesses and for cities in the future to work on their climate action plans, since our team has skills in GIS and seasonal and subseasonal forecasting, as well as other climate communication and policy skills.
I would like to add that one of my long-term goals as well is to develop in different languages and for it to be accessible in more parts of the world. I've studied Spanish speaking in other countries, and so I'm definitely interested in providing content for that eventually. We also have team members, Gianna, I believe, who you said are interested in spreading different languages as well. German and yeah.
German, Chinese, Spanish. We have one education team member who's actually in Vietnam, so she wants to share our resources with her old high school in Vietnam eventually too. And we have some people in India too. So a lot of different languages we could use, we could turn our curriculum into in the future too. But first we're making our slides in English so that we have a foundation first.
We have another question. Please speak about the importance of written conflict resolution within an organization.
Do you want me to take that one, or John, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. And Jenna, you can just jump in if you have anything you feel like.
Okay.
It is important, and it's something that we're kind of figuring out now as well. Because obviously when you're starting something from scratch, you're bound to hit hiccups. Um, and a lot of that, just to be quite candidly, we've been kind of figuring out as we're going through when we reach these conflicts, okay, because some of them you don't necessarily expect, especially when you're working with a lot of your friends. A lot of the time, when you're working with people that you went to school with and stuff like that, it's kind of switching into a different mode, because you guys are used to being friends beforehand, but now you guys are entering a bit more of a professional setting. So having written conflict resolution strategies is really important, especially when it comes to who's accountable to who, what role you're supposed to be filling out. Because as long as you have those clear boundaries, it's a lot easier to address issues rather than when things are a bit more ambiguous, because scope creep can happen. People can feel like their work's not being appreciated, or people can end up doing too much work or too little work, and just being able to have the boundaries set so this way you could eliminate those issues before they arise is something that's really important. So that's my piece on that. I don't know if John or Amelia have anything else to say towards it.
Yeah, it's also really important to check in with your team. People might commit to a certain number of hours, but capacity always changes, especially during a pandemic. People, their schedules change, they get new jobs, and especially just graduating out of school, people's lives change drastically. So figure out, even if people commit to something at some point, make sure that that's still what they want to do, and communicate with your team what are their goals and how do you think that they want to grow professionally through this work with you as an organization?
Yeah, and I just have something quick to add. We did have everybody write down and explain to us their time commitment and their goals. And we really left it up to people how much time that they can balance with their personal life. And a lot of us have full-time jobs and, relationships outside. So I think it's very important to communicate those things. And we have been very open about it.
Great. And then next we have, how are you raising funds for your program?
Yeah, so there's a few different avenues that we've gone about for this. A lot of them are project specific, so I can speak specifically towards education because that's my team. And a lot of that has to do with our long-term goals for the education program. So I'm currently trying to lead the team to create a curriculum that matches the New York State learning standards in order for it to be more easily adopted into schools. Curriculum creation and content creation are kind of pretty lucrative when it comes to trading with schools. Eventually, we'd like to keep our program open and free to anyone who'd like to use us as facilitators to take and learn about climate education and climate literacy, but eventually start trading with schools educational materials. Also, when it comes to our intern duties, and that's something that we are still outlining stuff, but people apply to take the program over the summer or whenever we have it. And they receive their duties as an intern. Some of that also has to do with fundraising. So as an intern, practicing fundraising skills and skills that fit into activism and stuff like that, there are certain fundraising goals that obviously don't dictate whether you complete the course or not, but are just set to kind of hone in some practices to be more beneficial for whatever organizations you go on to work with when you go back into your respective spaces. So that also fits into it. But that's what I can say towards education. When it comes to the other facets of I believe it's a bit more program specific.
Yeah, it's more program specific. We do also have individual donors. We have a Patreon now that just came up. We have a Buy Me a Coffee account, and we also have a Venmo to accept donations. And we received a small donation from another charity that wanted to support our goals with climate action and climate education. But yeah, right now it's mostly donors, and we're trying to generate funding for the education program so that we can pay our facilitators in the future. And we really don't want to have to charge for our program, since it just feels wrong to have a climate justice program but pay people to learn about that and take action in their communities.
Yeah, we absolutely don't want to charge for it. We do have somebody who specializes in fundraising. They've put together some research and documents for us for some potential projects that we have in mind, different ways to monetize them and work with larger companies who are working towards climate solutions. So we definitely think that there's a lot of potential there.
It's hard. One organization wanted to have a plan to generate revenue for one of our projects, but they wanted to fund it with oil and gas money. And we said, absolutely not. That's not in line with our values. So it's good to really start with a strong set of values and missions so that you know what you will accept as a collaboration and what kind of money you will accept from donors in the future too.
So I have one question. What was the biggest road bump that you guys have faced so far in your journey? And how was that overcome?
So that's a funny and interesting question. So I think what I can say towards that is when you're starting something like this, the road bumps are just built in. So it's really important to understand that you're crazy to think that you could start something off and have everything polished and perfect as soon as it happens. So just being able to accept when kind of plans have to change uh, is a really necessary part. I think one of the biggest roadblocks we've ran into is some ideas of like timelines. So obviously we all have an ideal timeline of when we think that we could be able to accomplish all of these goals because we're all really passionate about them. But being able to dial back and say, okay, now that we're taking a deeper look into this, I think we might have to go back a bit and try to re coordinate what we think is appropriate for timeline for certain projects. So that was what I can say from my experience so far. Might be the bump in the road.
Yeah, and I think it can be difficult to be flexible and communicative, and to collaborate with each other, because when you have a lot of passionate people starting an organization, you're all going to have different conflicting ideas, and different personalities and different strengths. And so it's how can we play those together and get along and balance our personal lives, with something that we're passionate about. You're not going to get paid to start something like this. You have to have a lot of good faith that it's going to work. And it has to be, you have to be passionate, super passionate. And sometimes it's hard to all be on the same page.
I think this pandemic has been both a strength and a weakness for us. I don't think we would have started with all these people together like this if it had not been for the pandemic and people had some free time and time just at home on their computers because of the pandemic. But also means that our team is all in different parts of the world and different time zones, and coordinating that and communicating with people remotely has been a little bit difficult. But yeah, I think pandemic is both a strength and a weakness.
So right now we don't have any more questions left. So I'll give us one or two or a couple minutes to see if any more come in, and then if not, we'll wrap up. So seeing as we have no more questions and there's another panel scheduled to start at 3, I think we are going to wrap up, but I'd like to thank all 3 of our panelists for their time. And oh, wait. Oh, it just says thank you. And thank all of our viewers for coming to learn about this. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. And yeah, feel free to reach out and email any of three of us if you would like to have more information, or if you want to just have a conversation later on and we can schedule a meeting together.